Everyone. I'd like to review the first exam for our course. Just go over the questions, give you an indication of what I was getting at and what sort of answers I was looking for. So that if you have any questions about how I graded your exam, I welcome them, and we should have a meeting, probably, online. But if you want me to take a closer look at your exam, please let me know, and I will definitely do so. And also, I make mistakes. So if you see anything that I did wrong, please let me know. But if you want to have some sort of meeting about your exam, uh, let's go ahead and do that. But take a look at the this video first. Okay, describe the question one. Describe the events of Genesis 3. Then comment on them. What do you take to be the meaning and significance of this text? Why? Okay, so that's a pretty open-ended question. It's basically asking you to give a rough summary of what happens in Genesis 3, which is the expulsion from the garden, starting with the temptation of Eve and ending with Adam and Eve being kicked out after having their punishments laid out by God. I think the basic events are that the man and the woman eat the forbidden fruit, and I think it's important to note that that's the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That is, that's what they were commanded not to do, is to eat this fruit that would give them that sort of knowledge. And then when God was very angry and surprised that they've done this after being tempted by the serpent to do it, they, well, first of all, they become self-aware. They become aware, physically self-aware, and then they realize that they're naked. And so they hide and they cover themselves up because they're ashamed, which is a very interesting thing. Probably, I suppose, connected with the idea of self-awareness, which makes you capable of knowledge of good and evil. But in any case, both of them are punished, and the man is punished primarily, I would say, by being forced to labor, to work, to earn his bread by the sweat of his brow. And then, perhaps even death. That from dust you're made, and to dust you shall return. The woman is punished with the pangs of childbirth. She will give birth in pain. Yet her desire shall be for her husband, and he shall rule over her. That's what the thing says. So there are punishments. There's this event, this momentous event where they eat this fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then they're punished. So what do you take to be the meaning and significance of this text is a completely open-ended question, and there are many different answers, any of which are good, except you have to write something and describe it in some detail. So, like, to do this question properly, you can't just pop off a few sentences. You've got to develop something, and that's, I think, use your judgment of how long the answers need to be, but they need to be long enough to explain your point. They need to be long enough to describe the events, and then to be long enough to actually give some sort of substantive interpretation, the meaning and significance of the text. So you have to give yourself enough time to do that. Question two is about Plato's Republic. What is the theory of human nature and justice that is reflected in the image of the soul that Socrates describes in the second Plato reading? This is a question that's ripe for internet Googling, because, Plato's theory of human nature is a general theory that's laid out in other parts of the Republic. So if you're relying upon a secondary source, Googling, Cliff Notes, whatever, you're going to come up with a sort of a generic idea. Well, there's the rational part, the spirited part, and the appetitive part, or desires. And that's actually correct, right? But it's not what's actually reflected in the image of the soul that Socrates describes in our reading, where he's much more colorful about it. They all correspond to those general parts, but there's a monster, a multi-headed beast, there's a lion, and there's a human being or a man inside of us. That's the real answer, I'd say, most directly is, it's based on the text. That is what the text says. That's the version that we get and what we did in our reading. So, And it does correspond to these more general descriptions of rationality, spiritedness, and desire being the three parts. But really, the part we read was much more put in different language. So, the theory of human nature is that each one of us has these elements in our soul. And the theory of justice is that the man or human being inside of us, the reasonable part, should be in control of the others. That's what it means to be just, more or less. And that this is the proper relationship between these different parts, right? There's the theory of human nature that we have these three parts: the multi-headed beast, the lion, and the man or human being within us. The theory of justice is really about how they're supposed to relate. Right? The theory of human nature is there are these three parts. The theory of justice is the claim that there's a certain natural hierarchy that these parts should be in, and that is what constitutes a healthy, happy, balanced soul. And that's how the theory is really a response to what Thrasymachus says in the first Plato reading, where he says that it's better to be unjust than to be just. This is an attempt to refute that by saying that even if all the advantages that Thrasymachus claims for the unjust over the just were true, that is, that they did better in life because they grabbed more of the good things of life, it still wouldn't justify putting these other parts in control, because that would, in essence, be choosing to be unhealthy, choosing to be unbalanced, choosing to be unhappy, because the claim is that the human being inside would be starved, and that the only real way to be happy is to have the human being inside in charge of the other two parts. So it really is, in that respect, a response to Thrasymachus. Number three, what did Aristotle mean when he said that man is a political animal? He meant that human beings were by nature meant to live in political communities, in the polis. That is, we're political animals insofar as the polis, or city governed by common laws, is natural because it's naturally an outgrowth of these simpler, earlier forms of human social development, relationship between man and woman, the assemblage into a household, these households assembling into a village, and the village growing, and different villages assembling into the city, the polis. So he meant that I think that living a political life, not like engaging in partisan politics, but living in the polis, living in a political community, a community of law, is not an artificial creation, but a natural development of human nature. And that's more or less what I was getting at there. There are other things to his argument where he mentions speech and reason being an indication that we're meant to live in such communities, which is also, quite relevant. But the basic idea is that what I said. So if you have any questions after watching this video, I encourage you to contact me, and we will talk about your exam in specific.